I'd like to give you a brief video tour around the Canon EOS 1000D, or as it's known in North America, the Rebel XS. Here it is, the 1000D. This is the successor to the best-selling EOS 400D or Rebel XTI, and that makes it Canon's brand new entry-level DSLR. Now the 1000D actually has quite a few things in common with its predecessor, most notably the resolution. This camera features exactly the same 10.1 megapixel CMOS sensor. The first major difference is that the 1000D now comes with a stabilised kit lens. It's the same focal length as before, it's an 18 to 55mm model, but it now features built-in image stabilisation to help counteract camera shake. The 1000D or Rebel XS may have the same size screen as its predecessor, a 2.5-inch model, but it's now brighter and it sports a wider viewing angle. But most importantly of all, as you can see right now, you can also use it for composing during live view, and I'll be giving you more information about that later on in the video. Continuous shooting for JPEGs remains 3 frames per second, but you can now keep shooting until you run out of memory on your card. Here's how it sounds. It's nice to be able to keep shooting until you run out of memory, but it's important to note that it only applies when you're recording JPEG images. If you switch the 1000D to RAW mode, then that shooting rate falls to a much slower 1.5 frames per second, and you'll also only be able to record about 4 or 5 frames until the buffer fills. So really, raw continuous shooting on the 1000D is next to useless. It's also interesting to note that Canon's downgraded a couple of other aspects of this camera compared to its predecessor. Most obviously, the autofocus system is no longer a 9-point system, it's now using the 7-point system of the much older EOS 350D or Rebel XT. Canon's additionally made a couple of other changes to this camera compared to its predecessor, and I'll show you a couple of those now as we take a tour around the controls. On the upper right surface of the 1000D or Rebel XS you'll find the command dial, the main on-off switch, and a button dedicated to changing the ISO sensitivity. You can now also see that ISO value at all times through the viewfinder. Around the back of the camera you'll see the control layout is pretty much the same as the 450D or Rebel XSI, except Canon has enlarged some of the buttons, like the exposure compensation, the menu and display. The writing alongside and also the icons is also enlarged. Eagle-eyed Canon followers will however notice that the detectors here that would have switched off the screen if you were looking through the optical viewfinder have been removed, and so is the infrared sensor for the remote control on the front grip. Turn the camera to the side and open the memory card door and you'll see that the 1000D takes the same SD memory cards as the Rebel XSI or 450D, and underneath you'll see it also takes the same lithium-ion battery pack. So if you're upgrading from the 400D or Rebel XTI, you won't be able to use any spare batteries or memory cards. At the side of the camera, behind this flap, you'll see the 3 ports at the top for the video output, in the middle for a wired cable release, and at the bottom for the USB output. Live view on the 1000D or Rebel XS is pretty much the same as it is on the 450D or XSI, so the first thing you'll need to do is go into this menu and actually enable the function. It's almost as if Canon's a little bit embarrassed about live view. Then when you're ready you just press the set button and you're now in live view, and I'll prove that by just wiggling my fingers in front of the lens. Now while you're in live view you can display various graphics on the screen. If I press the display button we can put some additional shooting information up there. Press it once more, you get a live histogram, and again if I wiggle my fingers I can make that move. Press it once more and those graphics disappear. You'll notice there's no grid. In order to display a grid you'll need to go back into the menu system, back onto this page and switch it on. So of course it's very useful to have a grid, and I'll make it more apparent there by again putting my fingers in front of the lens, but it's a shame you just can't switch it on and off by using the display button. Now in order to autofocus in this mode you'll need to press the exposure lock button. This is in the top right corner of the body. If I press it, you'll hear the mirror flip up to take a reading, the double beep to confirm the autofocus, but the picture won't return until I actually let go of the button. So to do that as quickly as possible you'll need to let go as soon as you hear the double beep. I'll try that once more. So I let go then as soon as I heard that beep, and as you saw it was quite a quick process, but it did involve some interruption of the image and of course the noise of the mirror flipping. But the 1000D offers an alternative focusing mode. If I go back to the menu system into the custom functions and change it from quick mode to live mode, we can actually use a contrast based autofocusing system, and you'll notice the graphics have slightly changed there. Now I can use the cross keys here to actually move this square to wherever I want the camera to autofocus, and you'll also notice it varies its exposure depending on where I place this square. Now if I press the exposure lock button, watch what happens. Now that took a couple of seconds in order to find the right focus there, but it did so very quietly and also without interrupting the image. I'll show you that again on another part of the picture. So just move the square up and press the button once more. And there it's locked into focus. And the other thing you can do is confirm that focus by zooming in. Here we are at 5 times and here we are at 10 times. And this is very useful if you want to manually focus the lens and make sure you're absolutely spot on. One of the things that makes the Canon 1000D or Rebel XS really special is the supplied EOS utility software. Now this works under PCs and Macs, and I'm using it here on Windows Vista. Now this lets you fully remote control the camera over the supplied USB cable, and lets you do things like change the ISO sensitivity, the image quality, maybe the white balance, or perhaps the exposure compensation. And then when you're ready to take the picture, you just press this button here in the upper right corner. Now that picture's transferred onto your PC or Mac's hard disk, and just look at how many pictures you can squeeze on your hard disk here as well. Even in RAW plus JPEG mode, if you've got plenty of space, you can take plenty of pictures. But what makes this software really interesting is the ability to actually see a live view from the camera on your computer screen. And to activate that, you press the live view button in the bottom corner of this window. And to show you this, I'm just going to zoom the camera out a little bit. And this is actually the live view in front of the camera right now, and I'll prove that by wiggling my fingers in front, although you may also see some of those clouds in the sky move. You'd have also seen this histogram live on the right hand side of the image. So far so good, but again making it really useful is the ability to move this white frame here. Let's put it over an area of interest and now magnify it using this button down here. Now this is an actual magnified view from the sensor in live view, and again I can scroll around it with these buttons. But what makes it really interesting is the ability to actually focus it again from your computer. So I can adjust the focus here by just literally clicking these buttons until you get it absolutely spot on. At first glance, the Canon EOS 1000D or Rebel XS feels like a bit of a mixed bag, because amongst its various upgrades and enhancements are a number of actual downgrades over its predecessor. The AF system has reduced to 7 points. The raw continuous shooting rate is just 1.5 frames per second. There's now no longer an IR sensor on the front for remote control, or sensors on the back that will automatically switch the screen off when you're looking through the viewfinder. And unfortunately this is a trend that we're seeing on DSLRs these days. Manufacturers are actually removing some features in order to save money, but to also provide greater differentiation in the range. For example, Canon would say, if you want superior autofocusing and faster raw shooting, then trade up to the 450D or Rebel XSI. So does that make the 1000D or Rebel XS a bit of a disappointment? Well, perhaps only to camera reviewers or enthusiasts. The fact is that this model has pretty much everything you want if you're in the market for an entry-level DSLR. The quality is really good, it features an image stabilised lens, and it also has live view. And as for those downgrades, will you really be shooting continuously in RAW? Surely JPEGs are okay for most people, and in use we found that 7-point autofocus system absolutely fine. So once you've made your peace with the 1000D or Rebel XS, you actually realise it's a pretty good camera and an ideal choice again if you're in the market for a budget DSLR. There are however some very key rivals that are out there with some great features and quality too. So to see how the 1000D or XS compares, head on over to our full review at cameralabs.com. There we've directly compared the quality of this camera with both its predecessor and the next step up in Canon's range, the 450D or Rebel XSI. We've also given a detailed comparison of the features of this camera against key rivals in the market. So to find out which is going to be the best entry-level DSLR for you, head on over to our full review. You'll find it